Welcome to Your Asian Besties, a podcast where we reflect on our life experiences and what's helping us along the way. I'm DeRay.
I'm Maryn.
And I'm Leah.
Each episode, we talk about a topic, unscripted and unfiltered. Today, we're talking about our origin story. I'm DeRay, and I'll be moderating. So, why don't we start talking about what is your Asian Besties?
Well, this is Maryn, and we're three friends who I think we're really, busy now. We're like in our later 30s, and you two are moms. We have so much going on. So this is just, to me, a place where we can have real talk. We can catch up, kind of make our friendship a priority. And I often think when I'm speaking to the both of you, I always feel like so much better about my life. So I feel like, it's a good thing that we can share that with others and get vulnerable, because it's hard to make the time for that these days. So.
Yeah, I agree. I feel, one, it's a great bonding time, and our conversations are always enlightening. I feel like I learn something, and I always want to share it with other people. So just having this recorded is great. Yeah, and I feel like I had a lot more to say. But...
And also, Maryn, I was going to say, I'm 40. I'm in a different bracket.
Well, hey, I'm on my way. We'll both be there soon.
Late 30s / early 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective too, in terms of the Asian part, we're obviously all Asian. I'm Japanese American, Ray is Korean American, Leah is Filipino American. And I think what I love about you two is that, to me, you're not like, you don't fit in the box, right? You're not like that model minority type. You both have made changes in your life. You're always going after something that helps you express yourself. And that's what makes me really respect you. And so I think with the Your Asian Besties, it's not like we're claiming to be the face of all Asians or anything like that, but we're just showing that we're, three women who happen to be Asian who are living their lives, and it will maybe give other people a different perspective, right, of what they might think of when they think of like Asian women.
I was going to say, I think that's that creative aspect too. I had the opportunity to see both of you on your Metastate movement journey. And way back when, Maryn, you were working corporate for a long time too before you went out on your own. And it's inspiring to me to see all of our journeys come back to the creative or be more into that. And I know we'll get into this later on, but yeah, growing up, I definitely didn't think I'd be where I am now in terms of being able to express that creativity.
Yeah, for sure. And also I was going to say, like, when we're talking about, Maryn, earlier you were talking about how, we happen to be Asian, and that's kind of where your Asian Besties came from. And it's not only for Asian Americans. But I was just going to say, like, it's interesting because when I was younger, I sort of really vehemently separated myself from being Asian because I was ashamed of it. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be othered. I didn't have the double eyelid. English wasn't my first language, and so I was ashamed to be Asian. And so, kind of there's a bit of like reclamation in kind of starting this project for me. I was like listening to a podcast episode with Minjin Lee, and she was kind of talking about how she's really proud to be Korean American. And I'm kind of on my way there of really accepting that it is a part of me, and to sort of rejoin it. And so I feel like that's kind of what it is for me going forward with this podcast.
Yeah, I agree. Even with your name, right, Ray, Do you want to mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I know like when I was younger, my legal official name is DeRay. That's not how it's actually pronounced, um but I was so embarrassed of being called this name that people couldn't even pronounce. They would call me Derry or Deree, all that just they don't sound very nice or acceptable or appropriate. Um, and so I just went by my middle name for a long time, Diane. Uh, but then, over the past few years, I started going back to actually being identified by my legal name that was given to me. Um, and so I guess there's like more to that. But I know also, Leah, you have a kind of story with your name as well.
Yeah. So twofold. First, Dory, I resonate with you too. When I was growing up, I definitely let's say I distanced myself from being seen as Filipino. Luckily, I grew up in a diverse enough town where I didn't encounter too much of that otherness. I just took pride in getting straight A's and being that good kid. I guess a model minority without trying to explicitly be, um, you know, being Asian, being Filipino as part of that identity. And growing up, I went by my middle name, Lynn. Uh, it was just something like my family called me. I don't know if it was just easier, but I never had a choice in it. And I never liked it. But I just felt like, I just went with it because that's what everyone called me. And it's one of those things, in hindsight, maybe it was just me not knowing how to speak up, giving other people the power to tell me what my name was or what I should be referred to. I just never thought I had it in me to get other people to refer me to something other than, what they were accustomed to calling me. In junior year of college, I did start trying to go by Leah. So my first name's Ophelia. Ophelia is just way too long and also had its own difficult pronunciation problems. But I liked Leah. It didn't stick. And I think part of that was most people were used to calling me Lynn. When I got a new job and when I was about to get married, I remember having that same thought again, that I didn't really identify with my middle name. And now that I was getting a new last name, I'm like, the two really wiped out my Asian identity. Like Lynn Federhoff does not sound like an Asian at all. And I remember thinking that I'm like, you could be on a call with me and probably never associate like my face to my name. And another big part of that, so I lost my dad 12 years ago now, and he was the one who chose Ophelia for me, and my mom chose my middle name. And I remember it was like such a waste of a name to like have that as on my birth certificate, to go through all these motions to change my last name. I'm like, well, why don't I also change or have people call me by a name I'd prefer? So by the time I changed my last name, I also happened to start a new job, got folks to call me Leah, and then with my last name, yeah, I think it was just like a lot for people, but at the same time, it's like, well, I already have a new last name, might as well just get the first name I prefer to be called there too. So it's been years now. My kids only know me as Leah. My mom still calls me Lynn, but that's okay. Can't change everyone. And I don't mind. It's like, her name for me. But yeah, and everyone else that I still talk to, all my friends now also call me Leah. And I think it's a respectful thing, right? It was weird for people at first. But I mean, that just goes to show that if people really want to stay in your life, they're gonna, adapt to that. So, as a definitely a very interesting intersection of, my Asianness, with this more, not that Ophelia is like Asian sounding, but I guess a little more exotic. and then, yeah, just going through an identity change overall. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can kind of relate to, first of all, what I recognized was that efficiency of I'm already changing my name. Why don't I go through the process of changing my first name too? So I definitely understand the efficiency behind that because I haven't changed my last name because it's still my biological father's last name. But I have qualms about changing it to my husband's last name. And it just is kind of like really tricky. So I'm not really sure what to do about it. But I was also thinking about Maryn, how you've had your name the same the entire time. And, when I was younger, your name was so melodic to me that even when we went through the period of not really keeping in touch, like during middle school and high school and college, I still remembered your name from time to time because it was so unique. Um, and so I'm curious if, like, because it's not, Maryn is not an Asian name. And I was wondering about that identity for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I'll briefly say that I knew DeRay in elementary school. We went through first to fifth grade together. And then Leah was my college roommate at UCLA. So I had two close friends from very different parts of my life change their names, which that was a coincidence. But I find it inspiring because, as you're kind of saying, both of your names were maybe more digestible or more accessible, easier for other people in the beginning, right? And then you reclaimed the name and identity that felt best for you. And I totally understand that because, yeah, my name is Maryn, which is actually a Scandinavian name that my dad dreamt up. I guess he had a vision or something and he came up with this name. My middle name is Ayumi, which is Japanese. And then my last name, Masumiya, is also Japanese. So I mean, I grew up with a name that people couldn't pronounce. And I think when I was much younger, I just wished that my name was Michelle or something more common. And so many people like struggled with pronouncing it correctly. Sometimes I think my mom actually caught me one time telling someone my name's Mary just because it was easier and she got a little upset. So I think, over time, of course, I appreciated it more as I got older that it was something unique. But yeah, it was always just something that was a little bit more foreign, right? And even middle school people would say, "Oh, your name's Marilyn Manson," right? Because they just look at the name and it's so intimidating. They would just like make up something like that, or they would call me Mary Jane. They just call me whatever they want. So people do that even if you don't change the name yourself, right? But yeah, I mean, I definitely identify with the two of you where I think we all grew up at a time where there was very little representation in terms of Asian Americans, and we were maybe raised to assimilate to the culture. And it's not until really like in the last couple years that I felt like, oh, this is an important part of my identity, and I wanted that connection to it. Um, so yeah, I think that's all stuff that we're going to be exploring on this podcast. But I think growing up, I always wanted to be known for my work and who I was, and possibly, thinking of ourselves as Asian, we thought of as maybe a negative thing or a mark against us, right? And that's why we didn't want to be associated with it. So yeah, I think it's been a journey, and from what I've heard, it's other people, do relate. It's a complicated thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring it more with you guys.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack. There's a lot to um, kind of discover and go through. And see what's under the surface, because I think, there's a running theme of, it wasn't really safe for us to practice or be our Asianness, or to accept that culture in a space or environment that, like you said, it was a mark against us. So, we didn't have that psychological safety to practice our culture in the way that we may have otherwise practiced if we didn't have that fear, I guess. And so, like, this underlying theme of, being a certain way in our childhood and revisiting that sort of as an adult, and practicing what we actually value in a space where we can be comfortable, I think is kind of the running theme that I see in some of our conversations. And I think that we'll continue to see in subsequent episodes. And so, I'm wondering about the future. What do you think? I think we kind of talked about, like, maybe the importance of this podcast to us. And I'm wondering, do you have any goals or intentions or expectations for future episodes or trajectory of the podcast?
For me, I guess it's always been this. I would hate for someone else to go through something similar in their journey, thinking that they can't speak up about what they want to be called, or feel embarrassed about, parts of their identity. And if sharing these experiences and what we've lived through can change that for someone, that's one of my goals, is to know, like, hey, you out there, you're not alone. Like, we're all going through this or have gone through this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it can feel lonely. I mean, I don't know, there's obviously like a loneliness epidemic in our country that we've heard about, probably made worse with COVID, and all the isolation, and then all the busyness that happens as we in our lives now, especially now that you guys have kids and all of that. And so I think all three of us have been on our own personal growth journeys, and no matter what we're facing, whether for you guys it's being new mothers, or a career change or health struggles, right? We all go through these things. They're very human things. And so I think maybe feeling a little less isolated in that journey, so we can share with each other what we're going through. Because sometimes I feel that way, right? When you're struggling with maybe your partner, or you're going through some health issue, and you're thinking, is something wrong with me? Because everybody else seems like, via social media or the, kind of surface conversations you have with people, they seem quote unquote normal. So is this normal? So I think, if anything, like Leah said, we definitely want to help other people feel a little bit less alone in their journeys, and just really normalize a lot of these topics that we face as women, as Asian women. Because I think a lot of women, I don't know, we all go through a lot of things, but we don't hear a lot of this discourse in like public. Maybe it is, phone calls and with just very close friends. So I think I feel good that we're kind of opening up the conversation and sharing these topics that might be discussed behind closed doors.
Yeah. And what I was thinking about that is, when I was younger, I knew what I was going through, but I didn't have the language to explain what I was going through. And it's only in retrospect that I recognize what I went through. And so even if I were to hear a podcast like this when I was, 15 or 19 or 23, I don't know if I would have related to it. Because when you're going through the trauma, or when you're going through this isolation or detachment from yourself in order to survive, you are literally in survival mode, and you don't know what kind of help you need. You don't know if you're even allowed to listen to something that is comforting. And because you don't really know if you deserve it or that it's a threat for you to head into that comfort. And it's so sad, right? Because it like really took me a long time in therapy to realize, oh, the purpose of therapy is to actually feel good, is to actually be well and healthy. It's not to fix yourself so that you can be more pleasant or more valuable to other people. The goal of therapy is to be comfortable in your own skin and to know that you don't have to change. And so, like, when I look back at, when I was younger, I didn't have the support I needed. One, because I didn't know that that's the support that I needed to be well. And so I hope that whoever is listening to this, to echo kind of what you both said, I really hope that you don't feel alone and that you can talk about this and that there are people who have experienced this and is still experiencing this with you, and that it's okay to tap into that and let that soften in.
Yeah, I think one thing I've heard, and I don't know how to phrase this nicely, but being in our later 30s, early 40s,
Thank
we're
you.
kind of uniquely positioned because we have lived through our teens and our 20s and our childhood. And so I've heard it that maybe we're in the phase of life where we're like, it's the ending of our quote unquote youth. We're kind of maybe transitioning into our senior year, right? We're in no, okay. I see. I don't know how to phrase this nicely, but it's somewhat of a turning
Sophomore
point
year.
in our lives.
Yeah, sophomore.
It's like we're like really young for our like later chapters in life, right? But we're maybe like culminating out of some of our youthful chapters. And so as Dre was saying, it's like we do have that distance now where we can look back. And I know Leah and I have had some bad relationship experiences. You can look back at all those things. As you said, we were just living through it, dealing with it. But now we can reflect on it. And then we can use that. A lot of the stuff I'm talking with my husband now is, we may have had all these survival strategies and coping mechanisms that we used to get through those years of our teens and our 20s that maybe are no longer serving us or are not going to serve us looking forward in our life. So I think it's a really special time, and it's kind of like this age that maybe doesn't get a lot of airtime because in our pop culture, it's all about youth, right? And then maybe we're not old enough to think we really have wisdom to share. But I think we do, because it's like we still have all of this potential. We have so many years of our lives left to live. And it's easy to get busy and just like start going in your default mode. But I'm like really looking forward to using this space where we can unpack things, we can reflect on things and figure out, yeah, what's not serving us anymore, and what do we maybe want to change looking forward. So I think it could really be a place of reflection and inspiration for the future. So I really love how we're looking to format our podcast with this past, present, future kind of mindset, because I think it's really powerful for anyone to do. So I hope just that practice will, help others look at their lives in a different way.
When you're saying that, what comes to mind with where we are now in our age is that time, we have the luxury of being able to reflect on those past experiences but not feel like the end is near, right? And a lot of people, to your point, at this age are probably having midlife crises and wondering, like, what do I do next? And I think we're all naturally introspective, and and can like do that now without going into panic mode because we are expressing what that is, right? Like the reason people have these crises are like because they have this loss of sense of identity, right? It's like my work isn't my identity, or now I'm a parent and it's all about my kids, right? But we still find ways to do things that are uniquely us. And I think with that, when I think about who I was in my 20s, right, I was so future oriented. I was like, someday, right, I want the house, I want this, I want that, I want, like the husband and da da da. And I want a career that, whatever, I'm like a manager. I feel like that now, right, with those years of experience, uh, like I'm not starting over in a career, or I'm not in school anymore. And at least for me, like my kids are old enough, like they don't rely on me so much, and that mental space is is so nice to like just be able to now get to talk to you both and really explore, right, a lot of that what used to be like autopilot or like go go go, and be able to carry these lessons to, yeah, what does the next decade look like, what do the next 2 decades look like, if we're still going to be working and not retiring, what does that look like for us, or how do we express ourselves and continue to do things that bring us meaning and bring us value, um yeah, without feeling the pressure of like, yeah, like trying to leave a legacy, I guess, right? And it's a luxury like to be able to do this, and if something that we say, experiences that we bring up can raise that awareness in other people who are maybe just 10% behind on the journey we're at, like I think that's a win.
100%. And I was going to ask you guys, this is again following our unscripted format. I have a question for you. If you can summarize your past, your present, and hopes for the future with one word in each category, what would they be?
I'll go first. My past word would be, okay, this is 2 words. Feeling behind. I felt behind so much. I felt like I was constantly trying to run so quickly to get to the future I wanted. So my password, Maryn, is feeling behind. Present is peace. I feel at peace right now. And future would be exciting, honestly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think in the past I was definitely a pleaser. I think I was trying to meet everyone else's expectations in all areas. I was that Virgo, perfectionism came out. I was like, I need to not only do well in school, but like be top, like excel. And then in social life and all those dynamics. And it led me to a place of burnout, where I looked at my life and I was like, I guess from the outside, it all looks pretty good, but inside I feel totally disconnected. And that was probably around my early 30s. I had that moment where I kind of just blew up my life. And from there, I think I've been trying to be more connected, like to my own intuition, my own emotions, really just trying to care less about what I'm looking like on the outside. And one phrase that stuck with me, I think I mentioned the book probably to the both of you. It's about like as a woman to own your power, and what does that look like in our world? And she used the word self-sovereignty a lot. So I really love that word, sovereignty, right? Like you have ownership. So I'd say, yeah, now it's all about, for me, connection and having that self-sovereignty. And I think in the future, I'm trying to find hope. The world is a little bit bleak, and there's a lot of things that you can be stressed and fearful of. But again, using that self sovereignty and trying to find, small ways that are in my control to bring joy and kind of be that light. That's like a big thing that I've been thinking about is when you look outside of the world, it's hard to see the light of a lot of the times, but we all have that within ourselves. And what can we do to cultivate that and bring hope to ourselves and in our small ways within our homes, within our small communities? How do we create that hope, that we'd like to see in the larger world?
Wow, you guys were both really profound with your words. And now I'm like,
Your turn.
I know, I'm a little thanks guys. I should have gone first. Um I think my word for the past is inferior. And my word for the present is reclamation. And then I think my word for the future is work, because there's a lot of work to do. But I kind of really like the word peace and hope, but I thought I would try not to use the same word. So work it is. But anything else you guys want to share in our first ever episode?
I think I don't know if we touched on the why, but I'm curious for the two of you. I know that we've all been friends, for quite a number of years, and even DeRay and I had done a project together in the past, but I'm curious, why do you feel like personally the urge to do this podcast right now? And then maybe like, why could it be impactful in this moment, in the world that we're living in?
I'll go first. So this resonates. I'm doing an art program right now, and part of the reason why the person who founded this art program created it was because she said, I feel like right now we're in some kind of art movement where there's really not a name for it, but there's a lot of crap out there. And her hope is for all the art students who go through this program is to bring back beauty and truth and authenticity into that. So similarly, that's been top of mind for me with this podcast. I have a daughter. I want her to hear these stories, and I want her, I mean, honestly, it would be awesome for her to hear about it in the future and like laugh at us and be like, those were your struggles. Like, how could you think that wasn't okay? Like to, tell people what you wanted to be called, or to say no if you don't want that, right? I think that would be, something that if she could take that for granted. And once again, it's how the time is now. There's so much negative stuff in the news, just everywhere that you hear. It's so negative, and I feel like we are at this turning point, if we can, to reintroduce and invite inspiration, hope, talking about like what's real to us, and really, continue to validate that for each other and for other folks who might not have this kind of friendship. So I think it's just being able to speak out loud our truth and having the ability and the confidence now, and really like at the phase in my life where I'm like, I don't care what you think, like I'm gonna say it. Having that now, which I definitely didn't have 10 years ago.
For sure. And I wrote a short story right before we hopped on to our call, and it was I won't go into the details of the story, but essentially the arc of the journey is exactly similar to what you said, Leah, which is that it's okay to sort of be disagreeable, that it's okay to kind of be unliked for what you believe in or what you want or what you value. And there's a lot of power in being able to say no and reject the things that are no longer serving you. And I feel like, I was so traumatized after the pandemic of like all this Asian hate. And it was really stuck in my nervous system of feeling powerless, and it reinforced, my early childhood wounds of being other, and that I don't belong. And, in this present theme of my life of reclamation, I know that I'm not alone in feeling like we need to take our power back.
Yeah, I agree with the both of you. I think the word that comes to mind for me is community. As I was mentioning, that I think a lot of us can feel a little bit of isolated, and I feel, very grateful to have the two of you as friends, where I feel like we can get vulnerable about anything, even like the biggest heartbreaks and hardships in life, that I feel like you two are so in my corner and you don't judge me. And that's such a rare thing, because people, we have plenty of friends, but maybe it's just kind of stays in a certain compartment and you feel like these topics don't really come up. And so I've always been, I think, like a community builder and in search of community and always open to it. But I think I just realized, like the three of us, I mean, we can really create that for other people, because I haven't quite found what I'm looking for, So yeah, I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Awesome. That was a really great. I feel like we got a lot off our chests. I feel very unblocked. How about you guys?
Yes, this is a great therapy
Yeah, I mean,
session.
Exactly. That's really, it's the free therapy that we need in between our real therapy.
Oh my gosh.
Interim
That should be our
therapy.
tagline.
Yeah.
So funny. Well, we are excited to take this podcast forward and see where it takes us. So if those who are listening out there have any topics that you'd like for us to explore, feel free to email us at yourasianbesties@gmail.com, and find us on all the social platforms at Your Asian Besties.
At the end, like, should we all say
Yeah,
bye?
I feel like
Okay. I know. It's all quiet.
yeah, that sounds good. All right, thanks.
Or you can count us in.
Well, one thing that my therapist asked me after my sessions is, what is your intention? What would you like your intention to be for the following week? So it could be a fun thing for us to try. So if we each think of, one word that we're wishing for ourselves and holding for our audience, what would that be? I think for my word, it would be grounded.
Can we do 3 words?
Yes, okay. Everyone needs all
I'm
the
always
words they can
cheating,
get.
yeah. I'm clearly not a one-word person. But mine would be, to find some way to reclaim part of your identity. It's a challenge.
And mine would be to find the courage to be disliked or disagreeable.
Nice.
I wonder.
And that's a wrap.
Yeah, and that is a wrap. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Bye.
Okay, and that's a wrap. Oh my gosh, that was so stressful.
I mean, that ended up being, I think, pretty good. There was some good stuff.
That was a good episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thanks for listening. Oh, damn it. I already forgot the line. Oh my gosh.
And cut. Just kidding. Take 2.
I know.